Hello, I'm Harry Hudke of EverythingOscale.com, and today my expert cinematographer is the Rancocus Kid, aka Charlie, and I'm going to do some instructional video on my newest product, the Propellar Foundry, which is copied after a New York shipbuilding structure which is still in existence. So let's get to work. This is the main face of the building. Onto this face go 3 bays. Here's a typical bay. This is built up. It consists of 4 parts. A side, a front. Now notice on the front it has 2 ears. The ears go towards the top. There is also a roof that goes on here at the end of the construction. Study that part carefully. Now this is the roof. It sits on here. Notice that it's got a gutter in the front for orientation. And this whole assembly fits right in these 2 tracks on the front of the building. Just like so. Each shipyard gets 3 of these. Now, the reason for the ears is for the mounting of the sign. This is a typical sign bracket. This gets glued right onto here. When all 3 bays are assembled, you'd have a sign bracket here, approximately there, over here, and over here. There would be 4 sign brackets across the front. There is a sign, and the sign would simply get glued to the bracket, as so. This is a raw sign. Notice that it's not cut out. The flash has to be cut out so that it looks like this sign here. This is the bottom sign. And they go like this on the brackets. Now, on the top of the building, notice the top of the building is beveled. At 45 degrees. Notice also that this was beveled after it was glued to the 2 sides. The face has to be beveled so that the roof sits flat. The next part is the main roof. The main roof gets glued to the front like this. This is approximately its orientation. Okay? Now, this, by the way, is a rough casting for the bay side. Notice that there's flash that has to be cut out, and the sides have to be smooth. This brings me to my next tool, which is, this is a Great Plains sander, but any sanding block will work. Simply smooth the sides down. All glued surfaces have to be roughed up so that the ACC will get a good tooth and glue them together. On the rear of the building go the frames. The frames, there are 4 frames. They glue 1, 2, 3, 4. And the frames glue like this. Notice that the angle of the top of the frame matches the bevel on the top of the face. Now let's study the frame a little bit. Notice that there's a notch here and a notch here. These have to be cleaned out thoroughly before construction begins. The reason for those 2 notches the clear story face goes here, and this cleat mounts into the top of the frame, like so. Likewise, this cleat also gets glued like so to the main roof and sits like this. This part is the rear roof. Notice that it too has a cleat on it. And this cleat mates into this notch like so. Then this piece mates on like this. The purpose for this type of construction is that when these 2 are glued together, it essentially forms an L bracket and gives great structural integrity to the model. These parts are the 2 sides to the building. These are the 2 exterior main outside sides. Notice that they're shaped exactly like the side frame. Now, the sides glue to the front like so. Notice that they glue to the back of the front casting, and the angles match up. Notice that there is corrugated material on these sides so that it matches up with this side. Okay. Now, here's a finished side. This side has 2 small pilasters at the bottom. 2 brick pilasters. These are already glued on. I glued these ahead of time, and I'm going to show you how they match up. This would be this side over here, and it matches up like that. Here are 2 raw pilasters. There's a left and a right. They have a track in them. And the tongue of this track fits into the groove on the side. One goes here, and one goes here. This part is what I call a ladder frame. This goes on the rear of the building. This is a reinforced part. It is orientated a special way. Notice that it has a built-in cleat on the end. Whereas on this side, it's flat. Now, the way it's designed is such that the cleat goes up against either end, like so, and gets glued. One goes approximately here, and one goes here. There are 2 supplied per kit. Now the way the ladder frame matches up with the regular frame, with the interior frame, is like so. This is the rear of the building, out of sight, okay? And this is how the ladder frame would mate up with the interior frame to give the building structural integrity. Okay, now this is a duct. Casting. And after all the windows are assembled and put in place, the duct sits on these bosses like so. And the duct has 3 pieces. There's a top extender, which goes here, and a snorkel, which goes here. The reason for the extender is so that the snorkel will clear the roof at the very top. Here's the roof. Okay. So that is the basic construction of the building that you see on YouTube. That's the basic orientation of all the main parts. Now, the main selling point of this building are the windows. Before I show you those, I'm going to show some of the tools that I use to build these things. Okay, this is these are little clamps which you can pick up at Home Depot, and these will hold your parts while you set the glue up. This is what I use, is Zap-A-Gap. And before you make any joint, you want to sand it, as I showed before, to get a rough surface and a zero air gap in your surface. This is called Zip Kicker. It's an aerosol, and it greatly accelerates the assembly. This is not necessary, but I like to use it because, to me, time is money. And when you spray this stuff, you just have to give it a quick shot. That's it. You don't have to sit there and play the kicker on your model. Okay, now to the windows. As I said before, this building has 284 Tichy windows, T-I-C-H-Y. It has 6 of these and 278 of these. By far the most difficult part of building this model is cutting these windows from the sprues and assembling. The way I do it is I take a sharp X-Acto number 11 blade with a good point. Don't press down too hard or you'll break your tip off. And I just take the X-Acto blade, boom, 4 cuts and it's off. 2, 3,
you got your hand in the way.
4 cuts and it's off. Now after it's cut off, you have to smooth the edges. If you don't get a good cut, you have to take whatever's left of the sprues off the edge. Okay? Let's do another one. Okay, so there's 2 of them done, and I'm going to dress the edge ever so slightly with the sander because you want a nice smooth edge for gluing purposes. Now, I like to glue them with this stuff right here. Plastrock plastic weld. It works very well on styrene. It'll also glue ABS. Get them close to each other. Paint the seam. When you get good at this, you can do it with one swipe of the brush. Put them together. As soon as it evaporates, you'll have a seam. So we're going to put this right here. And I'll take out some of the little small windows. Same technique, 2 cuts. Okay, let's lay this on here. It's hard to see because I can't get a good hand position. There. Let that sit for a second or 2, and there you go. And that's what the windows basically look like. Now, obviously there's a whole lot of windows. For example, this is a main side, and it gets 4 across, and then vertically it gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 4 by 5, which is 20 windows total on each end. Here's a bay side. This gets 2 across. So it gets 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So this one gets 28 windows in the assembly. So picture a large assembly of these windows to cover the whole bay side, okay? Now, these windows here, these go in the skylight, which sits up here, and they mount like so. There's also a clear story which runs down here, vent, and they just glue right in there. Now, to glaze the windows, I like to use micro crystal clear. And the technique that I use for this is simply paint a little bit on the window frame. This stuff dries with the same index of refraction as this evergreen 10,000 styrene, so you won't see it when it dries. You lay it on there like so. Now when that white glue dries, take a pair of scissors and cut it here, cut it there, pop out the window, and you set it right in place. You repeat this process for the great big assemblies. Obviously they take up a lot more clear styrene. But that is how you attach the windows. And the windows are going to take you a day. There's 207. They took me 4 hours. So that's a big job. Now, this little part here is a little part that I made up for ease of assembly. And the way I use this little part, this is a little angle square. And the way I like to use this is as follows. I take a side, like so. Now, I lay the side against the front, flush. Take a pencil and mark this line with a pencil. Okay? After you have the line marked, then you can glue a couple of these on like so. Say one here, one up here, maybe even one down here. So that when you come back with your front to attach to the side, it mounts at a guaranteed 90 degrees with a good firm fit. And I include a bunch of these in every kit for assembly purposes.
Do you include the clear styrene?
The styrene is not included. So that basically is the orientation and assembly of the New York Shipbuilding and Dry Dock model, which is the new flagship of my product line.
Is that the only piece that wouldn't be included?
That's right, yeah. So thank you very much for your time.